strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, it will be interesting to understand now how our talent or the workforce capabilities fare in the current changing marketplace. To get into depths of the situation is our next session, CHRO Fireside Chat Double Disruption, Workforce Capabilities in the Era of Accelerated Customer Expectations and Digital Adoption. To take this forward, please welcome Bimaljeet Singh Bhasin, President Skills and Careers Business, NIIT Limited, in discussion with Sreekanth, Global Talent and Enablement Services Leader, Ernst & Young Global Delivery Services, TK Srirang, Group Chief Human Resources Officer, ICICI Bank Limited. Over to you, Bimal.
Thanks, Dilip, and thanks Shri and Srirang for joining me for this session. I mean, again, personally, I've now been part of or working with the HR and the learning industry now for over 12 years in my career, and I think both of you are leaders that I have looked up to in the industry. So very happy to be engaging with you in this conversation. Just from a context perspective, we are all aware that enterprises are going through multiple set of disruptions. There's COVID switching on and switching off. There is, then the COVID-led remote working. In any case, the businesses are undergoing significant transformation. There is digital adoption happening, and hence there is technology-led transformation. But amongst many things, I think two things which really stand out and is almost spoken by everyone is the fact that there is digital acceleration that has happened, right? So while there was digital adoption happening any which ways, but obviously COVID has accelerated, and a direct impact of that is that customers have got used to digital experiences and very personalized experience and very fast experiences. So on one side, there is digital acceleration which has happened, and on the other side there is significant acceleration of customer expectations as well. Now, amongst all this, of course, eventually organizations and customers are handled by people in the organizations, and hence people capabilities amongst all of these disruptions play a very important role. And friends, it is this perspective that we would discuss in this part of the conversation. And we have two very senior HR leaders, like I said, and people professionals from two very large organizations and two sectors which really are in the middle of all of these disruption. I mean, technology and banking, both from a scale of employment perspective and also from the impact of disruption, are really in the thick of things. So with that, Srirang, I'll put my first question on to you, and more specifically, and I think everyone who's been a keen observer of the banking sector is aware that specifically ICICI Bank has gone through massive successful transformation over the last 3 years, which included these last 20 months, which were which were full of uncertainties. Now, I'm sure there are many dimensions to that transformation, and we had Abhay in the morning from ICICI Bank who spoke about some part of the digital part of the transformation. But like I said, really, it's the people who are the core at the transformation. I'm sure, given our audience and at conference is also largely learning and people leaders, I'm sure each one of them is very curious to understand the people dimension of the side of the story of ICICI Bank's transformation. How did you manage, at the scale that ICICI Bank is, how do you manage significant skill set and mindset shifts to drive the transformation that ICICI Bank was on? So we're very happy to have a little generous answer from you. I'm sure this will be a big takeaway for our audience. With that, Srirang, over to you.
Thank you, Bimal. Thank you, NIIT team, for having me over. It's always a pleasure to be a part of conference, and again, honor to be sharing the dais with Sri from ENY. I think it's a pretty, it's a long discussion, but I just try and highlight what are some of the key points that we thought very important for this transition. First of all, I think all of us are in the middle of a pandemic never seen before. Our responses also are evolving as we speak. And this is probably, as I keep saying, for the first time that the whole world has been brought on its knees. It is not really differentiated. The virus doesn't differentiate between the rich and poor. It does not differentiate between most powerful organizations to the weakest of organizations, nor does it differentiate between countries. In many ways, I think it has taught us, if this is one thing it has taught us to, is to remain humble and first accept that there are so many things that we don't know as to how things will evolve. And I think we need to really accept that and really respond to the situation as it comes ahead of us. I think in the banking sector, traditionally, I think banks have served customers, and I think all the banks across the country have served customers brilliantly well. Uh, Traditionally, banks have been focused on serving customers through broad products that they had manufactured. So if you look at most banks, I think are largely organized around either products or organized around markets. You could have credit card teams or PL teams or commercial banking teams, or you could have regional teams like North, West, South, East, depending on most public sector banks are more geography based organizations. Most private sector banks are more product based structures. But clearly, the demand from the customer was changing, and the customer was asking for an end-to-end solution for banking products. Now, that effectively meant that we had to really serve the customer end-to-end, and in a way break some of the internal departments or silos while we served them. That was, I think, the first shift that we made, and to have a unified approach, right, at the leadership level to banking as a business with respect to customer. Now, very easy to say it, but very complex, because in an organization that is really evolved over many years, where there are very strong lines and boxes that are already in place, and there are departments, right? I think this transition of really working as one team, I think was the first step that we took. It really required, I think, a lot of, I would say, communication and discussion amongst the top. And in summary, if there is one thing that I would like to really highlight, that many a time in corporations we discuss about, and every corporation is going through this change of the digital world that Bimal you spoke about, and how corporations have to respond to it. I think almost all these changes, right, have to happen right at the top. Very often than not, we transfer this problem by talking about mindsets in the middle management and junior management, and often we rush into training and those people. I'm not for once saying they should not be trained on skills, but I'm saying the fundamental block, if at all, if it happens, is going to happen right at the top. So for us, it was very important to get the buy-in of the leadership team of Team ICICI to really work as one unit and break those departmental boundaries and serve the customer as one. And to me, that I think was the biggest transition, and that in a way meant reviewing some of our org structures in the way we were really going to serve the customer. Second, and the most important point, is that we very clearly resolved that we will offer products in the marketplace that are fair to the customer and fair to the bank. Banking is a business of trust, and it's extremely important for us to build a brand of trust with respect to our customers, just as much as one would like the doctor you go to, or the hospital you go to. We implicitly trust the doctor there to guide us with the right diagnosis and right set of instructions. Same is true for banks, and so clearly we that's very important. I would say cultural attribute that we have really pushed to the last employee on the ground, that we will not serve the customer any product that we believe is inappropriate or something that we won't sell to our own brothers and sisters. So to me, that was the second and the most important shift. The third, I would say, biggest transformation that we looked at is to really look at our markets as various micro markets and not as one market. Traditionally, if you see how banks have organized themselves, you could, or most organizations in India would have organized yourselves as north, south, east, and west. But I guess, or maybe as metro markets or semi-urban markets or rural markets at best. But I don't think we looked at Bombay itself as an aggregation of various micro markets, right? And I think that was a fundamental shift we did, and is to look at Kolaba in Bombay as a different market to, let's say, Andheri as a different market. Similarly, Kolaba in Bombay could behave very similar to what TEFCOL in Delhi would operate to, maybe what a Sadashiv Nagar in Bangalore would operate, or maybe a boat club in Chennai would operate. So, and Borivali would be very similar to what Noida operates. So it depends now to see exactly as to what those markets are and how they really respond to those markets and really enable those markets. To me, I think that was again another shift, because in a way, there was a one size fit all which can happen in a large corporation. Structures are similar, whether you're in Bombay or you're in Madurai, or you're, let's say, in Raipur. You can't have the same structure, because each market needs a different structure, and also needs different resourcing. So at ICICI Bank, one of the big shifts that we did is to really move our strategy to really respond to each micro market. So which means, in Bombay itself, you could have multiple structures within the same market, depending on what the requirement is. You could organize yourself differently. You need to resource yourself differently. You need to skill yourself differently. So, for example, in a Borivali market could be a high demand on home loan products. So I need more home loan, trained personnel there. So my training needs in Borivali would be very different from what I would do maybe a wealth or a relatively different, training, let's say in a market, let's say in Kolaba. So the point is that I think we really broke India into micro markets, and then in banking, and I'm sure it's true for all corporations, certainly in banking, within the framework of risk and compliance, because that is a non-negotiable. But that framework has to be put in place. However, within that framework, the response has to be very contextual. So we empower those nodes in those markets to really take decisions in the manner that they feel is most appropriate. Our targets itself used to be, in some sense centralized, right? You have a certain target and you distribute it. In many ways, it used to be a mathematical distribution of targets. Often targets actually can really restrict performance. And that's, I think, one of the biggest learnings we've had. It can actually, it can come in the way of the corporation really, really pulling off much better performance. Because, the best is to really leave the micro markets, look at opportunities there, and go and explore the opportunities in full. That I think was another big shift, and our target setting itself moved from, X percentage over the previous year, which again is what most professional companies would do. If I did, I keep giving this, example because it connects in India at least, of a student who, let's say, passes out of 11th standard, and one gets, let's say, 90% marks, and the other student gets 50% marks. The principal, in this case being the head of the business, would have set a target of 10% growth to both the students. So the 90% students to get 99 and the 50% students to get 55. At the end of the year, the 55 student, let's say, gets 60 marks, and the 99 student gets, let's say, 95% marks. Our performance management system is to celebrate the 60% marks as overachiever, because he would have grown by 15%. Whereas the guy who got 95 actually grew less than 10%. But all of us know on any given day, a 95 is far better than a 60, right? Actually, for the 50 mark student, the target should have been 95. And for the 90, it could have still been 90 or 95. But the point is, because our target setting is independent of what the opportunity is, because in most cases, corporations don't know what 100 is, right? And because you don't know what 100 is, you tend to fall back on what you did last year and grow over last year. To me, and it's my personal view, if you start looking at growth over last year, there is a high chance and risk that you would run towards mediocrity very soon, right? It's always good to shift and have your focus towards the marketplace, and always have your targets, which is opportunity facing and market facing. To me, that was a big transition that I think we did, which also helped us to really unleash a lot of potential. And the reason why I stress on this micro market is, if you really look at the response of how we have responded to COVID, and I must compliment the government of India, the state governments, the municipal corporations for how they've responded. But had we had a one size fit all, and all of us know that even the current pandemic really operates at different levels depending on the cities. For example, Bombay is responding to the current crisis differently from what is probably happening in Nagpur to what's happening, let's say, in Raipur to what's happening in a village in Chhattisgarh. Now, unless you enable the local district officials to respond to the situation, and we all know, in all good faith, on March 22nd, we announced a national lockdown. Now, that was one size fit all for the full country. Now, maybe we had to do it then because we didn't even know what was hitting us. But today, if you see, we have a very calibrated response. There is no one lockdown for the country. They are called micro-containment zones. Each market is responding to it differently, thereby ensuring that the economy is not getting impacted while we're also ensuring safety of our citizens. That is immediately possible because we've enabled the local authorities now to respond as to what is appropriate to the market. So there is possibility that some markets in India may actually be operating as it was operating in November. It's possible in some markets in India we may have to go for a full shutdown for the next 1 week. So the limited point is that India, as a country as large as India, has to be responded, has to be dealt with in a manner which is most relevant to the local market. And to me, that was a fundamental shift that we made at ICICI. The last thing which I think was very, very important for us is this whole culture of working as a team. I know that there is a certain model that exists, and I'm not for once arguing one is better than the other, but I can tell you for sure that the model of differentiation, the model of sharp differentiation, and especially in a franchise-led organization like ours, it's very difficult to really celebrate one person over the other person. And in some ways, it actually brought the focus within and not allowed us to focus on the marketplace outside as a team. So we have actually done away with a fair amount of differentiation within the bank, much against what normally happens in the marketplace. Now, one can argue there are pros and cons for each of these models. The limited point is, at least in the banking sector, and many of the colleagues who are on the call today would represent that sector would appreciate that there are multiple people who really make the sale happen. Now, for example, it's possible in a branch when Bimal walks in and he gets served by a customer service officer, the customer service officer serves them very well. It's possible someone in the back-end operations has really ensured that his file is turned around very quickly. And that in some ways makes Bimal really seek out the next product from ICICI Bank. Now, should the credit go to the salesperson just because he tapped the ball into the goal? Or is there a complete machinery sitting behind them which is actually making the sale happen? So it's very difficult in the franchise setup to associate and attribute success to only one person. You work as a team. It's very difficult to really distribute within the branch who's better, who's bad, because you work as a team. So in many ways for us, we have really brought in the concept of a team because we win as a team or we don't win as a team, right? And hence we have kind of moved more closer towards team-based reward structures. And that again was a fundamental difference from the way we had run the structures in the past. And I believe that in an organization going forward, where you're going to be extremely agile, you're going to be completely flexible, you're going to be loosely held networks, right? Where you're going to be a part of multiple teams at one point of time. It's going to be very complex to really run an individual-based performance management system and also with fair amount of differentiation. So you've got to work as a unit and you've got to manage it as a unit. And some of the challenges and once you're in the team, then I don't think we really need to differentiate as hard as one should. Now, this is a point of view, and in the bank, we have really experimented with it. And that, touch wood till now, has really helped us, till date. But as anyone knows, these are things we will keep looking at. We will evolve as time goes, and let's see, how the market really grows. I think it's growing very well. The bank is growing very well. But these are some of the key big changes, Bimal, I just thought I'll highlight, and hopefully we'll address in further detail in case you have any further questions on it.
No, thanks a lot, Srirang, for those very generous comments. I think one area that I would definitely want to go deeper into the earlier part of your commentary, which is, specific things that you did at the leadership level. But we'll get there. Shri, let me bring you into the conversation now, and more specifically, Srirang, I had the pleasure of meeting you recently, and you made two statements which have stayed with me, right? And And friends, those two statements that Shri made were, a business of talent is business, and business of business is talent. Okay, and Shri, those statements just stayed stuck with me. And I would want you to tell us what was your thinking behind those statements, number one, and number two, how are you putting these statements into practice at EY?
Hey, thank you, Bimal and Srirang. Fantastic walkthrough of the entire banking system challenges and how talent is shaping the workforce to face that challenge. Thank you and congratulations for articulating very well. Now, coming back into Bimaljeet, I had around 30 years of experience in talent, working for different industries, automobile, FMCG, software products, IT services, and now with professional services for EY. So all along in my career, I could do really a lot of transformation of business. And all this transformation, the critical and core component was talent at the center stage of transformation. And you will agree, many of the transformation, maybe 100 years old Britannia, or 100 years old Computer Associates, or 100 years old HP, DFC, it is not a transformation of systems and process. It's all the transformation of culture and mindset of people. And that's very hard to do it. And I had an honor and privilege to lead some of the transformation in some of the companies I mentioned. So when I got interviewed in EY, my boss just said, hey, you need to join us. And I will ensure that as a talent leader or HR leader, you will have a seat at the table. Then he also mentioned that seat will be few inches taller than other seats on my table, whether it's a CMO or head of business or head of sales or markets or whatever it may be, the CHRO seat will be few inches taller. And what he mentioned, he really practiced it till today. And how can really talent have a business seat and drive business value for the enterprise? And he always believed talent bring unique value and perspective to a CEO, which no one can provide. When I was in GE, Jack Welch always used to tell, the right hand for me is Bill Konate, who was the CHRO at that time, and not the CFO, not the head of sales, or not head of the business. So he understands the value a good CHRO can bring to the table and transforming the business. So coming back into Bimaljeet's point, when I joined, first day itself, I really articulated a simple purpose or a vision for talent is how do you really ensure that the business of talent is business. We may have any number of KPIs, any number of objectives, but if you do not channelize all these initiatives to drive firms' business, whether it's creating total shareholders return or growth in terms of revenue or improving the margin or improving the customer satisfaction, if you do not align all your talent initiatives and if you cannot quantify that talent initiatives with respect to revenue growth, margin improvement, and employee experience, which is driving customer experience, your programs will not be successful. The second question I ask my team is, whose business is HR or talent? If the business of talent is business, whose business is talent? It's obviously the business of talent is business, and it's everyone's business. Talent is everyone's business. It is not only the talent community like HR business partner or compensation or recruitment drives the talent KPIs. How do you build an accountability where the business leaders, the counselors we call in EY, or people manager, or the employee themselves and the talent work together, driving impactful talent programs? In ERP world, you call them as managed self-services or employee self-services. But we need to really ensure that the talent programs are widely owned by all the stakeholders. If you don't do it, you cannot make a difference to the business. Then recently, I've seen, especially last August, we have seen high attrition in many Indian businesses. Many of our clients in US reached out to us saying that, hey, I see a large number of people living in my business in India. I'm finding very difficult to hire people in Indian marketplace and also matured, and it's a global in US, UK, everywhere. And they're asking what should we do differently? And I have seen whether it's client meeting or the business meeting, 80% of the time we spend as business leaders is talking about talent. So my third statement was the business of business is talent today, because every business, whether it's banks or IT companies or manufacturing or you name it, any industry verticals, they have a huge demand, but they're really struggling to fulfill this business demands because they don't have a talent who can drive that business demands. So in the war for talent or great resignation, the business leaders are talking in their business meeting about talent. And so that's the reason I believe the talent seat at the table is so important today. And when I came back after vacation in New Year, in first week of January, I was thinking about my career in last 30 years. What should I do in next 10 years? Now I'm 50. So in my last 15 years, I did talent role as well as business role like CIO for Britannia. I was managing $1 billion revenue for DXC. Today in EY, I have a business role. I head the delivery for all corporate functions and a couple of other business. So many times my business leaders ask me, you do very well business, can you move completely into business role and find a successor for you? But I refused to do it. I said, no, I want to stay in talent, but I'm very happy to do additional responsibility of business. And I strongly believe leading others from a talent professional point is an honor and privilege. Like noble profession of teaching and doctors, I feel talent also is a noble profession. If you can practice very well, you can impact lives and career and learning of many of your employees. Through that, you can impact family and impact society. So I wrote an article in LinkedIn, why I stayed in HR, although I have an opportunity to move in business. At that time, I reflected very interesting 2 articles, which is one published in 2005, almost 17 years or 16 years, why we hate HR. That's a time the business and the people hated HR, and they found HR is an administrative business and they don't add any value to employees and business. It's more than its policing function or a welfare function. Then I also read an article almost 12 years back, published by 2 Harvard students, say that why we got ever into HR. Normally, Harvard students go to investment banking and strategy consulting firm like McKinsey, Bain. But these two students decided to pursue a career in talent or HR. And the reason they cited is HR is a green field. It is not really impacted by good talent professional, and it's no more a strategy function. It's not touching the business. So when I read these 2 articles, it's really reinforced my beliefs that the future of talent is very bright, and talented talent professionals can make a huge difference to the organization. Bimal, I'll take 2 minutes. In last 3 years, what I have done in terms of ensuring that talent is strategic, it drives business. 3 things we have done it. One is talent function today, only incremental change is not enough. Talent requires substantiative change in its approach. And we call it as reimagination of talent or HR. When I say talent, it's HR function. And reimagination requires turning business model upside down, application of digital science and data science into talent domain with AI, ML, artificial intelligence, blockchain. Even I'm doing a project called 3D printing. How can replicate a successful profile in an organization like we do in 3D printing? So talent requires reimagination, use of digital assets, as well as data science today. When I started studying talent was arts. It is not a pure science, application of psychology, application of sociology, anthropology, statistics, and more of a common sense. It was the knowledge required to run a talent function. Today, you name any talent function, recruitment, compensation, performance management, everything is a science by itself. A lot of research has gone into this domain. A lot of digital and data science have penetrated this domain. So each topic in talent today is a science by itself. It has a body of knowledge, well established empirical evidence that it is impacting business and it's impacting employee lives and career of many people. So coming back into reimagination of talent using digital assets and data science, Apart from that, we focused on three important things. One is how do you ensure that we get both hands of employees and stakeholders into talent initiative. That means everybody in business, whether you're an employee or a manager or a vendor, like we work with ICICI Bank a lot. I was talking to the leadership team a couple of months back. How can ICICI Bank help us to transform our compensation benefit programs into wealth management for employees? Earlier, we talk about, we have a lot of payroll with ICICI Bank and HDFC Bank. I don't want the bank to only host the payroll for my employees. I want the banks to be partner to create long-term wealth and assets to employees. In fact, I want to rename my total rewards or compensation benefit into wealth management. Like banks use that concept. How can create long-term wealth for employees? And how do you articulate such programs to the employees? So how do you get both hands of all stakeholders? That means commitment. Their involvement in a talent program is important. It's not only talent itself has to do it. The second one is how do you engage minds of people? The mind is analytics. Today, for everything we do, we have a talent data lake, talent big data analytics, where we can understand, predict, and control phenomena in talent, whether it's attrition, we can predict it. We can predict next generation skills. We can predict performance of employees at an employee level. So we are using a lot of data science around that, which is called the head. We discussed hands. That means how to involve everybody into talent initiative. We discussed head. That is what you call it as the analytics engine of talent. And how do you engage the hearts of every stakeholders? And heart is programs like purpose. We are a purposeful organization. Our purpose is building a better working world. We want employee purpose to connect with the work purpose and organizational purpose. The culture and a lot of other initiatives we do touches the hearts of the employees, and it appeals the emotional of employees. So to sum up, I think I'm very privileged and honored to be part of the evolving HR body of knowledge. I feel my role is a noble role, like teaching and doctors. I could impact many lives and families and community through interactions and initiatives. And the talent require reimagination, not incremental. We need to learn lessons from other domains, like how car is having zero inventory. How can I do zero inventory in resourcing? How can I deliver just in time, like Toyota does it in talent? How can I use Amazon Prime same day delivery? When requisition comes, can I deliver same day recruitment, or can I get offer released on same day? So I really learn from other domain and applying talent domain, because talent domain require reimagination. I used the Britannia supply chain system for people supply chain management in EY, and it require both hands of stakeholders. It require a head and heart to manage. And today HR is a true science, and a lot of research and empirical evidence can be established how it can impact the business.
Well, if you don't mind, I just want to add to what Sri said. Sri, this whole concept of just in time and supply chain management was the initial, fuel for a partnership that ICICI had got into with NIIT, way back in 2008, where we went on to create an institution called IFBI, which today is one of the most well-known institutions in supplying ready-made bankers to the country. And I just thought I'll highlight that NIIT and ICICI have partnered over the last, I would say, about 13 years now, over 13 years actually, but maybe more. 16 years now, right? Where we've used it. So I echo a lot of what she said, but I just thought, Bimal, it took me back to the days when IFB was formed. So I just thought I'd highlight it since it's a NIIT platform.
And it's a very interesting perspective. And when Bimal came and met us I know him from Manipal days. When he met me a couple of weeks back, I was exactly conceptualizing an intervention called skill as a currency. Today, when you look at a lot of organizations move from knowledge to skill, and they have methodology and partnership like NIIT to develop skills. But a lot of organizations are struggling converting skills into a currency and get monetization for employees. And that's where we are going to partner with NIIT. I spoke to him, and how can we ensure that not only skills are developed, but it are optimized for business growth and employee get benefit. For example, a .NET guy paid at $10 per hour If I reskill in the service now, can I charge $100 per hour? So 10 times the revenue goes up, then I can increase the compensation of employee. And similarly, we are a strong believer, at least I'm a strong believer, if a Middle East had oil to transform them, and today many American next generation digital companies use data as their next to oil, I think India should use skill as a next to oil for India. And we have touched the tip of the iceberg of the skill as a currency in India, leveraging villages and many things. And even some of the skills in India is paid very low. In fact, I was talking to EY partners. See, we have strategic consulting skills in India. It's much better than what McKinsey, Bain, or BCG does or EY does in US. And we are not getting that premium paid to our consultants being in India. So how do you really increase the monetization of our skills in India? I'm a big believer. Look forward working with all. If you have any idea, I want to create a roundtable to get ideas on how can India use skill as a next currency, like Middle East used oil.
No, thanks. In fact, Shri and Srirang, in the morning in one of the sessions, there was a discussion around, can India become the fintech talent supplier to the world? And I said, why not? We've already been the tech talent supplier to the world, and our financial system, which is banking, has been recognized as one of the most robust banking systems in the world, including avoiding many crises. Right, so why not? And Shri, I did have I did read your that blog on LinkedIn about your choice of staying in the talent business for the last 30 years. I'm sure that has served you well, and it has served the organization that you've served, and I'm sure the overall HR community well. So thanks for making that choice, and Srirang, thanks for mentioning about IFBI. But Srirang, I'm gonna still request you to talk a little more about specific things that you did from a leadership perspective. You did touch upon it as part of the transformation journey, and if I can add a dimension to that banking in the last 20 odd months had this added complexity of keeping the branches running. So right, so you have to have people on the ground, and those people have to serve customers, and the environment is not very conducive. So both at the middle manager and the branch manager level, and especially frontline talent, and many of them could be very new talent. They still might not be very culturally or emotionally aligned to the organization. So what did leaders do at this point of time? I mean, one, from the transformation perspective, and second, from the dimension of keeping the organization growing, serving the clients well during the time of this crisis.
Yeah, thanks, Bimal. I think, in adding to what Sri mentioned and what Bimal you captured, and again, this is often spoken about, so nothing new. How you make it happen is a difficult one. I think the most important aspect for leadership is to really ensure that we drive the right culture within the institution. I think, that as an ingredient, I think is probably, in fact, I'm sure you're a skilling company, and I'm sure, there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done. And she mentioned skilling itself as a currency. And most corporations are working overtime to really skill their employees. In my personal view, if any corporation is going to fall short of really succeeding in a digital world, it may not be because of skilling, but it's certainly because of the culture, right? So I think that would be a much bigger showstopper for companies in transformation than skills itself, because skills, with the help of partners like you, Bimal, I'm sure corporations can catch up and can stay afloat. That's something that's learnable, and we know that for sure, and that's happening as we speak. But culture, unfortunately, is not something that you can go and pick it up. Right? It has to be internally evolved, and and most importantly, people have to live by those tenets of what you articulate for yourself. To me, that was the fundamental, I would say, transformation at the ICICI leadership level that I think was very critical for us to really make this whole 3-4 years happen the way it has happened. Coming to the pandemic, Bimal, certainly yes, it was something that was completely unexpected. unlike most other organizations, we didn't have the I would say the luxury of working from home. We are essential services, and we had to keep our operations on. So starting March 22nd onwards, all our branches, all our offices have been working through the pandemic, even in the middle of the first wave, second wave, and now what is often called a third wave. I guess it happened because we had to really bring in the purpose of what we are when we are part of an institution like ICICI. We are essential services, and hence it is important that when people join us, they join us for the larger purpose. Just like someone were to join the Indian Army, someone were to join, let's say, the medical corps, or someone were to become a doctor, right? He or she signs up, right, to join a profession, and that profession then demands from you a certain responsibility when during these times, and hence even any of the new joinees who join us, right? You are very clear to say that you're joining an essential service institution, and that will bring upon you certain responsibilities, and only if you're comfortable to serve with those responsibilities, you should be joining a banking system. And you're right, the pandemic has been a difficult one, but I must thank every banker in the country, and certainly my colleagues at ICICI Bank, for having lived up to this expectation the society bestows upon them, and have ensured that they serve the customers even through this pandemic. It's not been easy. Yes, we have lost few of our colleagues to this dreaded virus during the first and second wave, more so in the second wave, and I'm sure there are many bankers also who succumbed to this virus, and our heartfelt condolences to the family and deepest respects for them for having served the society with this phase. How did we keep them going? I think not an easy job, Bimal, because in a virtual world, there's only so much that you can do. And top it all, this year we've all faced a certain level of attrition, which is elevated from what was in the past. So obviously, you have a lot of people joining us in the organization, and joining us very often in a platform where we don't have work from home, but we still have isolated units, right? Branches, our 5,000 plus branches are working all over the country. We really don't have those meetings where we could come together, we could coalesce, we could really share our experiences and build a common understanding. Some of our academies that we run, Bimal, you're aware of, have also had to go virtual because of various reasons. So certainly, I think it is up the responsibility of leadership to find ways to really connect with every employee. So the virtual medium has certainly opened up huge opportunities for us to connect with employees, in as much as it has limitations. But I would say, Bimal, the biggest learning is to really ensure that we spend as much time as possible with the new joinees, handhold them, because I do notice that there is some early dissonance with them because they walk in, and a situation where they walk into a unit, they really don't connect to the larger purpose sometimes. So I think we have really tried to leverage on the technology platforms that we have. Luckily for us, we've invested in technology platforms over the years. We have a platform through which we can reach out to a lakh of employees on a two-way platform, two-way communication platform, right? Often it's a webcast where it's one to many, but we really have an amphitheater kind of a system where 1 lakh employees do get on the digital platform, and they can raise questions. And we've had all the senior leaders, including MD, CEO, EDs, all the senior managers regularly communicating to the employees on what the larger purpose is and what it takes of us to really respond to the situation. We are a young organization. Touch wood, none of our employees have had any issues, going out. We have had family members who have been concerned, naturally and rightly so. So we've had to manage a whole lot of issues around our work. But I think we have really managed, because one thing that I think all our employees sign up to is a larger purpose that we're here for, and that makes our job that much more easier to get them to really go out there and serve the customer.
Thanks, Srirang. And I think the part that you touched upon, players like NIIT working on the skill set. I think what we are increasingly also here in all our client conversations, in the work that we had started doing with many of our clients. Of course, culture is a much larger term, so I wouldn't go there. But if we can, from our perspective, narrow it down to mindsets, we've started working with many clients on addressing mindsets in addition to skill sets. So how do you create a mindset on opportunity maximization, say, for example, right? So in a bank environment, like the earlier example you gave, you served the customer very well. Obviously, you served the customer came in for a service, and the service delivery has happened efficiently and effectively. But how do you also monetize on that opportunity? I mean, the customer has walked in, right? So how do you maximize on the opportunity, or how do you create a mindset of maximizing on the opportunity despite all constraints, right? So like many leaders say that crisis is too good an opportunity to waste. So, you know, if there are constraints, and if large organizations like ICICI Bank or EY can maximize their opportunity in terms of those constraints, those are the kind of mindsets. And similarly, mindsets of agility, working like startups. So many of these mindset aspects is something that we've started working on with many of our clients. Sri, I'm going to push you to a little corner, give you two problems, which I'm sure both are very, very important for you. But I'm going to request you, at least for this discussion, to pick one and tell us why, which is if you were to dedicate all your time to choose between retaining your current employees or acquiring new employees, where would you choose? What would you choose, and why?
I think it's an excellent question, Bimal. Before I get into that, I just want to echo what Srirang mentioned. I have seen many of the transformation fail or successful because of the two important components, the culture and the leadership. And for me, I have seen and done a lot of research and work on the culture and leadership are the digital twins, like we use it in digital world. A data center located in UK may be a physical twin, and how it is managed in India is another virtual twin. Similarly, the leaders are physical twin of the digital twin, where our employees see them, they see they walk, the way they talk, the way they solve problems, the way they speak. It's very visible. But invisible part of this, which employee feel on every day, even the leader is not there, is the culture what leader has developed. I have seen leadership defines culture and culture defines leadership. And many organizations I have seen, when they want to change the culture, they change the leaders, because leaders are not able to change the culture. And when the new leaders come to an organization, how do you assimilate new leaders into the culture and identity of the organization? The companies like Toyota and GE and EY have a strong culture, and they are consciously monitor the culture and ensure that the leaders are inducted properly and successful in that culture. So coming back into your question, I'm a big fan of retention, and we cannot replace one another. But when you are growing, you need to hire, and even if when you are growing, the stress on hiring increases if you don't retain people. So in fact, I bet on retention over rehire, and I do every initiative in an organization. How can we grow the employees within? How can we prepare organization employees for next generation digital skill set? How do you engage people to really create a brand and attract more people through each employee as a brand ambassador? So any retention initiative you drive in an organization, consciously and unconsciously define your brand. That brand define your hiring difficulty or easiness. So great starting point if any organization is retention and engagement levers. Whenever I joined, recruitment always there is always a struggle, but I heavily focus on retention and engagement. Through that, I redefine the hiring process. But I will also share it with Bimaljeet, a white paper I have written thanks to Corporate Leadership Council. It is research 20 years back. If you say take this axis as a cost, vertical axis, cost, and horizontal axis as a percentage of attrition. And for example, you are at a 40% attrition. And if you want to reduce that into 10% attrition, you get a curve like this, two curves, and you get an intersection point in the curve called optimum point for retention or rehire. So I have seen to move a needle from high attrition to medium attrition, very low investment required from you in terms of dollar value, but you can do a lot of other things. But after some time, you find retention is costly, rehire is better. That's what the BPO industry have cracked it. every attrition they use to rebuild the organization and cost structure. So, so to sum up, I will focus on retention and engagement, but we are also developing a science today in great resignation and difficulty in hiring. What is the optimum threshold an employee can be retained and have an economic value? Beyond that, rehire is a better. Then how do you manage the churn, knowledge management, assimilation of new employee, and leaving the existing employee? How do you optimize it? So that's a science today. As I mentioned, a lot of science coming in talent. So making that graph and having a scientific approach in retention versus rehire is also today very famous in organization. We do a lot through retention lab. We have a lot of scientific tools we do. As a result, our attrition is much lower than industry. You will get shocked. Our technology attrition is 18%, industry have 30%. And of course, in some of the service line, we have single-digit attrition. We owe to our culture, our employee experience. We say whenever you join, however long you stay in EY, your exceptional employee experience is lifetime. And our boomerang, people who leave for compensation come back very quickly because they miss the experience. Our boomerang hiring is 15%. If I make 100 offers, 15% of that is people who work with me want to come back.
No, thanks. And I know we've had interesting conversations about talent as a science as well, Sri, in the past. In fact, to the initiative that we run with ICICI Bank that Srirang was mentioning about, we internally call it sourcing as a science. So how do you source talent as a science? But I know we are on top of our time, and given my fondness for both of you, I can go on and on and on. But I have a job to do here, and thank you very much. I think very rich conversation. Srirang, very thought for your generous sharing with people about all that ICICI Bank did. And like I said, everyone who's a keen watcher of the industry knows the very successful transformation ICICI Bank has gone through. And Shri, to your views on talent and talent as a science, big fan of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bimal. Thank you, Shri.
Thanks.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Bimal, for the meaningful session. That will certainly be very thought-provoking.